Soderman, and I was interested in the argument of why classical music in America is presumed dead. In January of this year, Mark Vonnenacker published a very controversial and publicly criticized Slate article called Requiem, Classical Music in America is Dead. About a week before the Slate piece appeared, the Minnesota Orchestra emerged from a 15-month lockout crisis, and the day after publication, the New York Philharmonic and Seattle Symphony announced energetic 2014 to 2015 seasons. The statistics that are presented in his article are all poorly researched and badly argued. Here I briefly summarize just a few of the topics of this article that were some of the main arguments for the death of classical music. The rise in 5% in actual classical album sales is approximately 14 million albums being sold, nowhere close to being a dwindling number. In the record industry, two big crossover records in 2011 would account for the subsequent 20.5% drop and would have obscured a steady increase in sales. Even though only 2.8% of albums sold in 2013 were classical, that is a larger percentage than the share of the U.S. car market occupied by BMW, Volkswagen, or Mercedes-Benz. The number of non-commercial classical stations has indeed risen to the highest point in history, but this is moreover a win than a loss. It offers more variety and choice than a public radio station has, and it's a step forward towards a programming format that values audience loyalty over sheer numbers. NICO filing for bankruptcy was something that everyone should have foreseen, as in 1943 when NICO was founded, the opera had been in financial crisis for around 262 years. The 8.8% of concert attendees of adults is equivalent to 1 in every 10 adults going to visit a concert. This is approximately 21 million people who attended a concert. While that number has indeed dropped, it's still a larger number than the combined population of the 16 least populous states in the USA. A lot of these issues tend to rise with the emergence of technology, and while technology may dampen the attendance at opera houses, it opens many doors to produce new and exciting works of art that could never have been performed before. The Boston, Handel, and Haydn Society launched on Christmas Day of 1815, and next year they will celebrate their 200th anniversary. How many other American phenomena have endured for 2 centuries? Classical music is the sum of all its institutions, performers, and listeners, plus a 1,000-year-old cultural lineage. It can't be snuffed out through any combination of bankrupt orchestras and mediocre album sales. What's most remarkable, perhaps, is that the industry remains relatively vibrant in the face of an American media culture that appears so determined to marginalize it. Throughout all the potential replacements that have come about in modern-day society, classical music will never be replaced. Its intricacy and art form being captured in a singular piece can never be duplicated by any of the emerging music genres today. In early January, the Metropolitan Opera actually admitted in the New York Times that ticket sales are declining. This is one of the flagship institutions of opera, and Peter Gelb, its general manager, was supposed to be reversing the downward trend in ticket sales. This shows that, in general, classical music institutions are facing a pretty challenging future. Are people going to be able to earn a living playing classical music the way they could 2 and 3 decades ago? Musicians have always struggled to build a life in music, and orchestra jobs have always been contested. But now the wealthy institutions are reporting trouble. I have no doubt that classical music will continue and prevail, but those young musicians, more and more, are the ones asking questions about what kind of careers they can hope for. As the musicologist and pianist Charles Rosen so eloquently put it, the death of classical music is perhaps its oldest continuing tradition. This timeline shows just how long the crisis in classical music has lasted, and just how superfluous it is to declare 2014 the year the art form kicked the bucket. Boundaries need to be pushed in order to find progression and improvement in any profession. Today's obstacles become tomorrow's achievements, and the musical world will grow with the pushes that come from within. It's important that this prejudice that classical music is dying is challenged, because it dissuades interest and profitability in the musical sector and can keep income from being generated. The reports of classical music's death have been exaggerated for centuries. So far in 2014, the Dallas Symphony Orchestra has been solidly stuck in the late Romantic period. Great masterworks are not always performed masterfully, and hearing a shoddy version is a waste of time. But when it is done really well, as the DSO has been known for doing, it becomes something great, an unmistakable work of art. Some modern composers believe that the magic behind a piece lies within the time period it was created, but when you create that piece outside of that time, the magic is lost on ears listening. But a good work of art is a good work of art, and the feeling that you're left with after witnessing a great work or piece is something you don't want to miss. So take heart. Classical music isn't dying. Some people will write bad articles, and some great articles will go unnoticed. But for those who love the field, there are more productive ways to collaborate, intellectual resources than we can dream of, and it certainly won't be over a dying art.